Welcome to the Middleware Tech YouTube channel. In this series, you'll learn about OOPS class and object. All code examples used in the videos will be available on GitHub. Let's get started.
Whatever things we find in the real life, we can define it as an object. An object has some attribute and action. So that you'd say, right? Each object have some attribute and action. Each object have some attribute and action. So if I've given one examples of pen. If you take pen object, it has some attribute and action. Similarly, you can take a particular object like mobile, right? So your object name, if your object name is mobile, then it has some attribute and action. Okay, attribute and some action. Fine. Now this attribute, tell me some examples of attribute like for mobile brand name, then cost, right? RAM size, right? So these are some of the attribute we can define for a particular mobile. Similarly, I can define some action like calling, assume. Fine. So for a particular mobile object, I have just defined some attribute and action. Fine. Okay. Fine. So attribute, I told you that attribute is that one that has some value. Okay. And action is that one like I've given calling. It's an action. Okay. So for your object, we have some attribute and some action. So sometimes we define it like that. Each and every object have some state and behavior. Okay, so same thing, but we use the term also like this, called each object have some state. Attribute sometimes we defined as an state, and action we defined as a behavior. So each object have state and behavior, correct? So we can define it like this way also. Now like this way you talked about. Now the thing is that we have used, now the question is that whether we can, I'm just writing some of the object name here. You have to tell me whether they are object or not. Fine. Like beautiful. Then I'm writing count, running, then order. Now you have to tell me that whether they're object or not. Let me clear that object part first, then I'm moving next. So can I define beautiful as an object? It's not an object. It's an attribute. It's an attribute. Similarly, account, if I want to say account, we can define account as an object. Account is an object, but this account object cannot touch. Account object we cannot touch, right? So it's a so the object we can define. We can define it as an object. So we cannot touch. It is said to be as an non-tangible object. So object can be defined as a tangible and non-tangible. Okay. So So this pay mobile object is a tangible object that you can touch, whereas account we cannot touch, intangible object. Similarly, running is not an object. Running is it's an action. It's an action. Fine. Okay. Whereas order we can define as an object. Order we can define it as an object. It's an object, and because order have attribute and action, attribute like order ID, order name, or description, and action like order closed, order open, right? Okay. So this is how we can define object, we can categorize object. Okay. So now see, let me talk about the class now. I'm talking about class. Class. So if I want to say something, anything about class, before saying anything, let me write one class first. Writing one class, just see here, please. Class mobile. Mobile. So this is my class. Fine. So inside the class, this object attribute is defined as an instance variable. So we can write here object attribute is defined as instance variable. Fine. So object attribute, if I'm going to define as an instance variable, so it will be like this. This is an attribute. Control C, Control V. So you can write here a string, brand name. Let me add everything as a string, or if I want to use double, that is also fine. Double cost, fine, and int RAM size, assume, fine. So what we have done is that this mobile attribute is defined as an instance variable inside a class. So this is an instance variable inside my class. I have created some instance variable. So object instance variable, fine. So object attribute is defined as an instance variable inside a class, fine. Okay. Now object action we can define as a method inside a class. And defined as a method inside a class, right? So we can write void calling. That's a method. So method is write like this, right? Method has to have a return type. Fine. So write something inside a method, print something. System dot out dot println inside method, right? Okay. Now if you see this class, object attribute is defined as inside instance variable inside a class, and object action is defined as a method inside a class. This is a method, fine. So this is my class mobile that right now this class that have some instance variable and some method, right? Now here we can have two types of variable inside a class. Okay, we can have two types of variable inside a class. Now the variable that is declared inside a class that are called instance variable. Similarly, you can declare a particular variable inside a method also. Int a equal to 10. I've declared one variable inside a method, right? So if I declare a particular variable inside a class, these are called instance variable. If I declare a variable inside a method, then it is called a local variable. Right? It is called local variable. Fine, right? Okay. Now here, so how we can differentiate these two types of variable, right? So let me write how we can differentiate these two types of variable. So I'm just talking about instance variable and local variable. How I can differentiate between these two types of variable? See, this instance variable are those variable that is defined inside a class outside method, right? So instance variable created inside the class but outside method. Fine. Whereas local variable is created inside a method only. Just see here, local variable created inside a method, right? So local variable created inside the method, right? Local variable created inside a method, right? Okay. Second point is that these instance variables are by default initialized. It has a particular value. Okay. When you create a particular variable inside a class, so these variables are by default initialized because this is a string, default value is null. Okay. This cost default value is 0.0. Okay. And this RAM size default value is 10 or 20. Right. So sorry, default value is 0. Int, right? Default value is 0, right? So this instance variable have some default values. Fine. Whereas local variables, it doesn't contain a default value. You have to initialize it manually, else you cannot use it. If you're not initializing it and you're going to print this, it will give an exception. Okay. So just see here, I'm talking about instance variable and local variable now. So just save this file as a mobile.java, copy. Now we don't have any main method, right? So let me write one main method first. Public static void main string args. Fine. So inside this class, you can write like mobile m equal to new mobile. Fine. And inside this I can, now you'll say that how I'm going to create this is I'm creating an object of a class. Still now I have not told anything else related to that, right? Okay. So I'll talk about it. This is how we can create a class object. Control Z. This is how we create a class object. And when you create a class object, first you have to use the class name and instance variable name. This is my object new mobile. So this reference is pointing out to this object. Then we say that m is a mobile object. Okay. So I've created a mobile class object. I've created a mobile class object here. Okay. And using this object, you always call this method or this variable. Creating an object of a class, I always call this method or variable, right? Now I'm talking about instance variable and local variable. Okay. Okay. Right. So let's print instance variable first. System dot out dot println instance variable. Instance variable. I'm going to print. How to print instance variable? System dot out dot println, and here I can call the instance variable creating an object of the class. So you can write m dot brand name. Brand name. Right. So similarly, I can use Control C. Second one, use some space or slash, whatever it is. M dot cost plus slash m dot, tell me, RAM size. RAM size. Now see here, I have printed this instance variable. Just now I told you that instance variable, I'm printing the instance variable value. Fine. After that, I'm going to print the local variable value. Just see here, please. Control C, copy. Control V. Local variable. Local variable. Local variable here A. So I have to print that variable value. Okay. How to print? After inside a method, you can print this A, and then you can call this method here from here. So you can call here m dot calling this method, right? Then it will print this local variable value, right? So what I'm doing here is that I'm going to print the local variable and instance variable value, and we'll see, because I'm talking about the difference between both type of variable, instance variable and local variable in your class, right? So let me check. So save this file. Control C, copy. I'm using Notepad today. I'll do Notepad. From tomorrow I'll use the IDE. So I'm using mobile file, save as mobile.java. Fine, save it. Now I have to compile and run. So just see here how it is running. I have to compile and run, right? So Java C, let me move it. Java C mobile.java. Fine, I have compiled. Now see here. Okay, some mistake is there. Mistake in the sense in your code, you have this mobile, right? So brand name. So when you're printing this brand name, B should be small letter. Cost is fine. RAM size is also fine. Fine. So close this. Enter. Java C mobile.java I've compiled. Now just see here. It is not taking the local variable value. Just see here, it is not taking the local variable value. Just now I told you that local variable value, you cannot use it till the time you are not initializing it. If you want to use local variable, you have to initialize it, else you cannot use it. It will give an error, right? So what I'll do, I'll just initialize the local variable value as 10. Now I'm printing it. It should work now. Okay. So in your program, you have to use local variable value as 10. So save it. And let me check, compile and run once again. Yes, so I've compiled, and when I'm going to run it, enter. Now see here, just see here, please. Instance variable value, I just now told you that instance variable value, that by it will print some, it has some default values. Brand name, default value is null. Cost is a double, right? cost we have used double here. It's printing null. m.cost. m.cost. Okay. And what we have done here, let me check in my program. Mobile.java. This is a cost, right? And printing here, I'm going to print all the variable value cost size. It's correct only. Save it, compile, and run. See here. Now it is the correct output. I know some might not get updated earlier. Okay. So just see here that string has a default value of null, double has a default value of 0.0, int is a default value of 0. So instance variable value by default initialized. Fine. We got another one point about instance variable. Second point is that instance variable is by default initialized. Instance variable is by default initialized. Fine. But when you go with the local variable, just see here, local variable, it is not by default initialized. You have to manually initialize, then only you can work with the local variable, else no. Right? So we can write local variable like we have to manually initialize local variable. We have to manually initialize local variable. Fine. That's it. This is the major two difference between instance variable and local variable that we are going to use inside our class. So inside this class, that mobile class we have used instance variable that is by default initialized, and local variable that we have to manually initialize, then only we can use it. Fine. Okay. Now next point is that if I have a class, then I can create multiple object of a class. Okay. If I have a class, now this is a mobile class. Now if I have a class, I can create multiple object. Assume one of the mobile is from one vendor, another mobile is from another vendor. So assume so that means if I have as same like think about a particular design. If I have a particular civil engineering drawing, based on that civil engineering design, I can create multiple building in different location. So if I have that design, based on that, I can get multiple object. So if I have a mobile class, right? So for one class, I can create multiple object. Okay. For one class, I can get multiple object. So that's why we say that class is a blueprint of a particular object or template. Fine. So for one class, I can create multiple object. So we can write here another one point. So from one class, we can create multiple object. We can create multiple object. So that's why we say that. That's why we define it like. Class is called blueprint of an object. So that's why class is defined as a blueprint of a particular object. Fine. So if I have a particular class, then I can create multiple objects from this class. Okay, this is one object M. I can create, similarly, I can create multiple object, Control C, right? Control V, this is, assume this is a second object, M1. Second object we have created. Similarly, I'm creating the third object, Control V, M2. Fine. So if I have one class, then I can create multiple object class, right? So from that point of view, we can define as a class as a blueprint of a particular object, right? Right. Now, right? Okay. Okay. So anyone have want to add any one point here on class and object? Anyone have any questions from here? Just last time before break, we have spent some time on object concept. Now I'm talking about one step ahead, how I can define class using object, attribute and action. If you see the mobile attribute, mobile object attribute, I have defined as an instance variable inside a class. Mobile action I have defined as a method inside a class. And like this, we have created one mobile class and I have written one main method so that I can compile and run. Right? So inside this main method, I have created one mobile object and second mobile object. So multiple mobile object I have created inside my class. Right? So that's why I define class as a blueprint of an object. Right?